Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and we've got week 2 of the OP12 Meta's weekly power rankings from TCG Matchmaking, and I am on the road right now. I'll be going to the Toronto Regionals weekend, so if you guys are there, make sure to say hello. I'm looking forward to seeing what this event looks like, and is one of the largest events for North America for this season as well, so it should be a really good time. But for this video, we are going to go over the power rankings. If you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the One Piece card game. I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you guys want deck lists for any of these, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events. I've been keeping up to date with the power rankings week by week, so you can see all the deck lists that have been doing well over the weeks and as we've been getting the new restriction lists and everything else. So this is the second kind of full week with the new restriction list in rotation, and we're going to look at that. So starting off, we do have the power rankings, and a couple of things I do want to mention too before we get started is that this is just a accumulation of the best 10 decks based off TCG's matchmaking formula for it. There are, I think, more than 10 decks that are super viable for this meta right now, and based off their formula, 11th and 12th were both Kalgara and Anel, two decks that also were able to get some tops for this first weekend of the OP12 format this previous weekend. I also kind of want to note, and this is something I noticed as well, is that the Shanks had kind of a low win rate despite having like a lot of matches, and compared to like Luffy and Bonnie, it does seem like the rating for this guy is like a little bit high. And based off my conversations with TCG Matchmaking, a lot of it is based off just you are looking at the win rate across all of the matchups as well. That's not looking just at the top 10, especially since you don't know the top 10 when you're making this formula because they're trying to calculate it, right? You can't really kind of have like this feedback loop as well into it. So, but this is something that they are aware of. They're going to kind of look into and see if there's any ways to make their formula a little bit better. I do think Shanks is good. I would probably put like Blue, Purple, Luffy, and Bonnie a little bit higher than it. And honestly, based on like all the ratings, they are around the same kind of viability in the same way. And I think Shanks is viable and did get a good amount of tops in this past weekend too in our first weekend of OP12 events. But I think third was probably a little bit high in my own personal radar. But we've got Zoro, Silver Israeli, Shanks, Blue, Purple, Luffy, Green Bonnie, Green, Purple of the Luffy. We've got Marshall D. Teach, Blue Kuzan, the Blue and Yellow Nami, and the Blue and Purple Sanji. So in general, this meta, and we can tell by also all the decks that have been topping over the last weekend too, I think there are more than 10 decks that are viable. These are just kind of the 10 that I think are doing moderately better than average on the rank ladder, and also just really present. You can kind of tell by the matches that people are using that a lot of different viabilities, and you can look at like past results too, where I think that it's pretty clear that both Zoro and Silver Israeli are really present, but not exponentially more than a lot of other decks. I do think that they are strong, but again, not exponentially more. And it's really cool to see that it's not like, a clear best deck in format. And even if there is, it's not going to be by a wide range as others. So a lot of decks are viable right now. You can see that by a lot of people trying some other stuff, and especially going into the Bandai Card Fest regionals or finals at the end of September, where I know a lot of people are going to be trying, find the best deck for them in that format as well. So they also do have the snapshot for the leader matchups. If you guys want more of this data, you can check it out on their Patreon as well. But you see, Zoro and Silver Israeli both have just really good matchup spreads. Zoro only really suffering against the Silver Israeli, but with a 36% win rate. I think Bonnie and Kuzan are not favored, but not unwinnable in those cases. And across the board, otherwise, it's a pretty smooth sailing. Silver Israeli has a pretty solid matchup spread. Bonnie and also Blue and Yellow Nami are some of the tougher ones for it too, but not, I think, as unwinnable. Yeah, Bonnie specifically really, really tough for the deck, but not too crazy. We've got Blue, Purple, Luffy, where you have a rough matchup into, again, the most present decks in Silver Israeli and Zoro, but across the board from there, you still have like your fantastic matchups. Green and Purple Luffy is still a little aggressive for you, right? And so it can be difficult to like survive the early turns, but if you are able to do so healthily, you can get there. We also have Shanks. We do have a good matchup into Silver. Just, I'd say that Zoro and Silver Israeli are about evenish, right? It's definitely in Zoro's favor, but not by a wide margin. Blue, Purple, Luffy is still just an abysmal matchup for the deck, which is, again, what kept it from being viable since OP11 in my mind, but you don't have to worry about seeing Blue, Purple, Luffy as often as you used to, so that's pretty good. Teach is also a tough matchup, but other than that, you have a good spread. Bonnie has a great spread too, only really losing to Teach right now. Shanks and Blue, Purple, Luffy are not in your favorite, not unwinnable. Green, Purple, Luffy, I've kind of, it's been surprising to see it spread because it's just a deck that I've always felt is just like really strong and good at what it does. I think it has my kind of rule of thumb for this deck is that it can win most matchups, but it's never like super duper favored, especially in the top. The only real good matchup for the deck, I think, right now is Blue, Purple, Luffy. Outside of that, you can win against most other things, but it's not in your favor. You have to really kind of work for it. We also have Marshall D. Teach, which, I think has some great matchup spreads, but also just really polarizing. Having, I would say, like a disadvantage, probably is the better word for green. Zoro, the red Silver Israeli, and the green and purple, or sorry, the blue and purple Luffy there. You do have good matchups into Shanks and Bonnie, which are really present. You have, again, abysmal win rate against green purple Luffy, and then kind of evening it out from there. So it's an interesting deck, right? I think it's a bit of a gatekeeper for the format because it is something that I think it'd be really difficult to not face the deck over like 7-8 rounds plus. So you do have to be careful what your matchup looks like to it. I do think that it's going to be tough for it to be really consistently. I don't know if this deck is really good at going undefeated and winning an event right now, but it's really good at topping, and I think that has a high potential for it. Kuzan's also just in a kind of weird spot, right? Again, you have okay-ish matchups against Green Zoro and Silver Israeli, but then you have a really tough time against a lot of the other kind of top 10 decks. So that's something that, if you're playing almost exclusively Zoro, you're in a good time with Kuzan. Outside of that, you're in a tough spot. Nami's got a really good matchup spread in my mind, right? Are only, like, Zoro's like a little bit disfavored, right? Blue-purple Luffy is at least more manageable now that we don't have Katakuri and Linlin. Bonnie's also like a little bit of a negative matchup too, but you've got some great stuff. And Nami also gets some new support with Star Deck 22, which releases today as this video comes out, so that can also boost the deck. So I think Nami could be approaching a higher tier with those new cards accessible. And lastly, we've got Sanji, and Sanji is just in such a weird spot. It has such an abysmal win rate against Zoro, which it's going to be really tough. Like, I would expect if you're playing 9-10 rounds, you're going to face at least 2 Zoros, and those are approaching auto losses for blue purple Sanji. So that's going to be really tough, I think, for the deck to do continually good. I think it will be able to get some tops here and there, but that's such a disadvantage for the deck because of it having a worse matchup into the again, most present. I would expect Zoro to be the most played deck in any kind of room for a regional or higher event for this meta right now. But you do have some good matchups too. You have a mostly even matchup against the Silvers. You can beat Shanks as well. And you also have some weird good matchups against like Teach, Kuzan, and Nami. But, I'd say strictly stuff that was mostly in like the top half of our top 10 this week. Sanji has a bit of a hard time, so that can help. That can hurt it from doing well, I think, in the long term. So that's kind of my thoughts on the matchup spread. We're going to look at the individual deck lists right now, too. And these are, again, deck lists with the highest win rate after about 50-plus games in the ladder. So we'll look at that. We're going to start off with Zoro. And almost every week, if not every week since we've got this, we've always seen like this Fishman Island version of it, right? It's not like a strict Fishman version, right? We just kind of run the cards that already have synergy. There's a lot of Fishman that are slash type that really you were able to find with your Hiyori and your Perona. The Vanderdecken is the kind of main card why we run this, because it has this you may trash one Fishman type card from your hand, or the Arc Noah from your hand or field. You can KO one of your opponent's rested characters. So being able to use this effect to just get rid of anything rested, not caring about the cost, is really, really strong, especially for something that's only costing 2 Dawn. So I think it's kind of worth being able to run this as like a tech card. It's not going to be difficult to have like a Fishman card in your hand to do so, and that's really it. But generally with Zoro, right, a lot of the deck is pretty understood, right? You play your 8 Searchers, you play 4 Cavendish, you play 4 Tashigi, 4 Mihawk, and then the usually 3 or 4 copies of the Luffy's the Man Who Become the King of the Pirates. So other than that, it's mostly just 2Ks and support cards. I think there's a lot of different ways you can build these. I've been seeing some kind of interesting text at some of the regionals we've had this past weekend too, but Zoro is Zoro. You guys kind of know what it looks like and why it's been so good immediately in this format as well. So next we got the Silver Israeli, and this deck I could probably, I didn't check outright, but I'm like 99% sure like this deck verbatim with these ratios but like topped a lot of events for this past weekend. I think Silvers is just really understood from deck construction way. If you're playing this deck, you kind of have to be around 45 cards the same with this. 4 of every Searcher. We've got Sanji as our 2K. We've got the Sanji 3-drop to work with our 4-drop Luffy, 4 rush cards, and then the events to help you get there as well. So this is kind of what I'd expect. This is almost like the most basic build of Silver Israeli. And again, it's a deck that you really don't worry as much on deck construction and tech cards, but more your play style and how you approach matchups too. So not much more to say, but there's Silver Israeli. And this is, I think, sincerely, if you're trying to practice against this deck, this is the build you should give your buddy to give you to try against it. So next up, we got Shanks. And so this is a slightly different build, mostly with the inclusion of the 6-drop Uta 2K. I really, really want to like this card, but I don't know. how I feel about it, right? The fact that you get to play a 4K blocker that costs 6 on board, which means you don't get hit by Usohachi, is really, really good, right? So it's a 2 cost as long as you have a character with 10k power or more, and it doesn't have to be original power, so you can give a 9k and Dawn, and then you get that additional reduction for it. But the issue with this card is that it's not searchable, right? I think that this card and maybe the 4-drop Tony Chopper 2k blocker are about comparable, right? At the end of the day, being able to play this for cheaper is nice, but then you also are just a 4k blocker, right? You're not a 6k blocker on defense that Shanks can maybe get you to live with it too. But it does kind of make sense to have a cheaper blocker when you're also trying to leave Dawn open for cards like Gum Fire Fist Pistol too. I think this card is really good for early removal, especially with the new 4-drop Shanks blocker. Using that with our leader can get you rid of a 7k body or less, which is really, really nice. I think the only issue with this card that I find is that there's just Zoro and Bonnie have such a great way to tap 2 Dawn and blockers and such that it's going to be really difficult to really consistently have Dawn open for this late game without your opponent having a great way to interact with it. So I think 2 copies is fine. I would definitely I think it's a great way to plan it, and just the fact that this card exists means that if you ever leave 2 Dawn open, your opponent has to be afraid and has to really try to play around the removal that can kind of press as well. So other than that, I've been seeing 7-drop Newgate be pretty popular in these builds. We're not playing into this one, or instead opting for more of the 10-drop Shanks. So we've got the removal and 3 of the Rush Shanks, and then just kind of more of the usual suspects for this deck as well. But here's the build. I do think that Shanks is strong right now. I know a lot of people are, I think, kind of on the up and up with it, and I do expect to do kind of better as we go further into this format too. So here's the build there. Next up, we got blue and purple Luffy, and this deck definitely is, I think, more viable than a lot of us thought it was going to be after the restriction. I'm not going to say that no one still believed in this deck after we saw the restrictions, but clearly it lost 2 of its better cards. But I think that this deck is still really present, and because of that, it's been getting more and more popular since the first week because people are re-believing in what this deck can do. So I have seen a good amount of different packages over the last couple events that we had this past weekend. I would say this is mostly a standard build, but there is the inclusion of the Don Quixote Rocinante, this being able to just kind of get you 2 Dawn open at the end of every turn, and the fact that it's a draw 2 trash 1, or a trash 1 draw 2, I guess, with an event is really, really nice to be able to get that additional Dawn back and help you get that card advantage that blue-purple Luffy kind of needs at sometimes, right? We still are playing the Sanji, we're playing the 8-drop Monkey D. Luffy, and 4 copies of the 9-drop Mihawk, just kind of these replacement cards for what Lin and kind of 8-drop Katakuri used to be. If you're playing Rosinante too, you also could play the 8-drop Dofi if you want to. You can do your power play of 9-drop Sanji into 8-drop Dofi into 5-drop Rosinante, which I think can be really, really strong. I've also seen a Navy build. You can check that out for the Carta Magica event too. But generally speaking, I think that the main core for Blue Purple Luffy is still really strong. You have less of a potential to go infinite without any access to healing right now. But I think that that's fine. I think the healing was really what kept this deck, in more the obnoxious territory, and then also, not having a big blocker that you can hide behind for most of the game also helps it out a lot. So here's the build here. And again, I think Blue Purple Luffy is going to continue to be more present over the next couple weeks, so do be on the lookout for that. Next up, we got Green Bonnie, and Green Bonnie has just been fantastic in this format. I think that it's been great for people who've been playing Bonnie since the year ago when the leader released, and just kind of all these incremental adds we've got, right? We also had a star deck that came out at the beginning of OP11 that's included a couple cards. Kid Killer specifically, I'm kind of surprised I don't see this card more often in Bonnie builds, because one, it was low-key built for it, but the 1 extra Dawn that you get back for your leader effect is really crucial in some situations, right? And I know a lot of people are playing the 4-drop Urouge blocker. I know people are playing Cavendish, and the new Bonnie blocker gets you a Dawn back after using the effect. But sometimes just having a searcher that lets you be able to find that additional card, but also lets you get that Dawn back is cool. So I think that's something that's really strong. Something also you can do is 8-drop Kid. You can, let's say you have 9 Dawn or something. What you can do is that you can attach the Dawn here, and then on their first, and play out the Kid Killer from your hand if you already have enough blockers. And then afterwards, if your opponent attacks, you pop the Kid Killer, and then you're able to get the rest after, this is still taking that first attack. So I think that's something that can be really helpful and help you with some of your weirder Dawn turns. But I do think, like, obviously 1-drop Bonnie Searcher is strictly super strong too. And if you keep it back on the board, that extra draw every turn is really nice. So other than that, one extra card that I noticed is an oldie as well. It's the Starter Deck 2 Eustace Captain Kidd. This is an SR from that second Starter Deck. It's a blocker, but also Dawn ×1. At the end of your turn, you get to set this card as active. So, it's a bit of a poor man's version of 8-drop Katakuri, but that card was really, really good when it was in blue, purple, Luffy, and more defensive decks. And being able to find like a 7-drop searcher, searchable version of it, I think is really strong in a deck like this one. So I think this is a cool add for the deck, being able to have attacker that can also go back and block again. I know a lot of people have been using Mihawk, which you can't play this card with Mihawk because you can't play anything with a base cost of 7 or more, so you do get restricted from that. But I think the card is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing if this becomes a little bit more common, because I do immediately see what the value this card can hold in a lot of matchups, and helps you kind of press for game without having to go all in sometimes. So other than that, I think Green's just got a lot of great cards right now. You're going to see a lot of kind of tech choices, I think, pop up here and there. And here is the build for Bonnie. And then next up, we do have the green, purple Luffy. This has been the deck that, it came out in EBO2. It has a pretty strict card list. There are some tech choices on if you're playing like Tony Chopper blocker, if you're playing in any additional ramp cards, if you're playing also like the Nico Robin blocker too. Generally speaking, this build is running none of that, but we are adding some additional tech cards. One, Dad Man's Game, right? This is usually a 2 or 3 copy of the fact that green, anything besides 4-drops or Juro can search for this card, so that's really good when it comes to our searchers. So that helps us kind of go for game in situations where we couldn't, because we don't really play Hody. There's also the Thunder Bagua, which I thought was an interesting add. So being able to use this to get that ramp when you need to, you're pretty easily down to 2 life or less, and also the ramp trigger is pretty nice too. So I think this is interesting to. I've been seeing this outside of like just this too. I've been seeing people play it outright as just that potential like defense blocker defense ramp. Just because I think of all the purple Luffy decks, green purple Luffy is definitely the one that loses a lot more Dawn. I think like the Gum Gum Giant is a little bit more of a liability in this deck compared to a lot of others that can run it. So. Other than that, I think this deck is still viable. It is still, like, in my mind, one of the safest choices in this meta, and one of the best investments you can make if you're getting into this game too. So not much more there, but there is the green purple Luffy. For the rest of these, we've got 4 more. We've got Marshall D. Teach, and I'm going to just speed through this one. Teach, you guys know what it looks like. Key things that I've noticed over this past weekend. Almost everyone decided overnight that we're playing 3 copies of the 10-drop. I've almost never seen 4 copies in any of the builds up top. So that's just an interesting thing that we all, I guess, had a global hive mind and said 3 teaches enough on the top end. Shiryu is back, really helpful against like the Silvers Rayleigh matchups and others, and also against Zoro. Being a 7k on your opponent's turn means it's a little bit difficult for them to remove it, which is great. This 2k I don't see as much play, but it is interesting. Being able to play it on the board, and then against Zoro too, if they want to remove it, they have to give you a draw. So like they just kind of keep it on the board for a while, and then you can activate the main whenever you want to. Same kind of thing with maybe like Doc Q, and then Black Vortex has been a really strong card against Zoro specifically, but it does help you in some other matchups if your opponent doesn't sequence or play around this card correctly. So other than that, Teach is in a good spot. It's going to continue to top in my mind, and here's the build there. Next up, we got Blue Kuzan, and it's been interesting to see what this deck's kind of transformed into over the last couple weeks. I think like a lot of the cards you have to play are pretty understood, right? You got to play 4 Kuzan, 4 Garp. A lot of people have been bouncing between 4 or 3 copies of Sakazuki, and I can understand like why 3 copies is usually enough, especially in a deck that searches a lot. I've come around on the other side on Aramaki, even though this is one of my least favorite cards to play in the deck. I do recognize that you kind of have to play it in some situations because it is just a big 8k blocker that's difficult to remove. So that in itself is sometimes enough. It kind of is like a Kuzan if you really want to, like a backup Kuzan, because you do get to, if you think of this like being able to get out of an attack for free, that does help you in that situation. Other than that, just kind of the general blue cards. We are playing 1 copy of the OP12 Monkey D. Garp. This being able to draw 2 and bottom deck 2 just means like if there's a card that you really need to see, this can help you do so. And then I've also kind of come around on Cavendish. I really don't like that how many non-counters we have to run in this deck, right? This is currently running 26, 22 if you don't count the Pheasant Peck as well. but being able to get that extra draw, I think, is helpful. And if you play this card on curve, it's just strictly better in a lot of situations. So I think that's helpful. And I don't think as many decks can just get rid of a 4-drop like this on curves too. So you do get that extra value. So I'm going to have to try this out the next time I try Kuzan, but I think it is, just having a way to help you get more card draw is helpful in this deck too, and it does offer some consistency by getting that draw too. So not much more, but there is Kuzan as well, and then we've got the blue and yellow Nami, and again, this is one of my favorite decks in this format. I haven't been able to really test it because I've been waiting for the Star Deck 22 to come out for it, but even without that, there's been a lot of different builds. There's been a lot of great adds from this set. Strictly, I think like the Kuma has been a really strong card in general for just being a cheap heal that helps you get to the late game a little bit easier. Baby 5, just getting a draw 2 off of the trigger is amazing, and I think this is something that's been really helpful for this deck to get some extra card draw there too. I think that I have seen a lot of techs. I have seen like the 7 Warlords version of it, right? Because we do get to find cards like the Kuma as well as like Boa Hancock. We do also sometimes run Slave Arrow, which is really nice. So I think there are a lot of synergies with that build too. I know that like with the Star Deck 22, like a Wano build can be coming up too, since we already play like Hiyori and Kikunojo, and it's not very difficult to add a couple more Wano cards to make it worth it. I think that this deck has a lot of open ending, and it's going to be cool to see what this deck kind of transforms to in the next couple weeks. So we are still missing the promo for Nami that gets us that draw 1 in the Dawn attachment. So that does feel a little bit bad, but even without it, I think this deck is incredibly viable, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it does in the next couple weeks. And then to wrap it up, we do have the Sanji, and again, this is I think the tied for 10th place. I think there's a lot of decks that could also just be better than Sanji on a week-by-week basis, but it is a deck that I know a lot of people have been trying to put a lot of effort into. It kind of gives me the same vibes as kind of like Reiju and other decks like that, where it's its own kind of gameplay style. It's one where you kind of are bunkered into your own little world with it, and you try to do your best with it to try to get as much value as possible. So there's not much that I've been seeing. I've been seeing like maybe people play like the 1-drop blocker Carne a little bit more often, just because it can be obnoxious. You do have to have 4 more events in your trash, but that is very, very easy to do in this deck particularly. It also means like Reiju's also been a strong blocker. I do think like I don't know if it's bad or good, but I do think that there are some chances where you could also play like 8-drop Katakuri or 9-drop Linlin if you think those cards are strong enough to help you get to like the late game. But I think, again, we do play enough blockers as is. I have been seeing people play like 1 or 2 copies of the 6-drop Star Deck 26 Monkey D. Luffy, since we are a multicolored leader. Making the leader a 7K can be really helpful. We do have like our Sanji 2K, our 3-drop body, which this does win matchups by itself because some decks just strictly cannot remove this card, and that's really helpful. And then just kind of a lot of the events that you're kind of worth looking forward to and expecting from this deck too. So not much more there, but I do think this deck is in a good spot. I do expect it to do top occasionally. I wouldn't expect this to top every event in this format, and I think winning would be a huge triumph for it, but it's still very viable, and I think a lot of people are trying it out, so that helps it out there too. But that's going to be it for this one. Those are kind of my thoughts going into pretty much this next weekend. We've got a lot of regionals and events this weekend too to keep our eyes on. So if you guys are wanting to find out those deck lists when they drop, you can find them on my website when I get them, so make sure to keep checking. I'll be making some videos, and again, if you guys are going to be in Toronto this weekend, make sure to say hello if you see me there. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.